Here we're going to take a look at yet one more example of how we can color correct one of our images using Photoshop. Yet we're going to take this a little bit further. We're going to add to our color correction a little bit of masking in order to have some subjective control over a particular area of this photograph. Well, this is a photograph of my daughter Annika from just a couple of days ago, and I love her big blue eyes, and I love how blue they look in this image. Well, one of the things I want to do though is color correct this image because I'm thinking there might be color shift. In order to analyze the image, one of the things that we can do is evaluate, is there anything in the frame that we think is neutral or white or gray or black? In this case, I know that this background was white. So I'll press the I key in order to select the eyedropper tool. Then I'll go ahead and hold down the Shift key and I'll click on that background there. Well, when I analyze my RGB values, here you can see that yes, I do have some kind of an interesting color shift. So what I want to do is start to bring these numbers closer together. I can also hold down the Shift key and click and drag this point around just to see if this particular type of color shift is consistent across the background. And that's really important because sometimes you may set a point and you may inadvertently set it in a wrong spot. Another thing that's worth pointing out is when using this tool, you almost always want to change your sample size to something other than point sample. In other words, if you choose something like 5x5 average, it will take a look at where you clicked and then average the values in a 5x5 grid around that point. Alright, well, now that we've done that, let's make some corrections here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on my adjustment layer icon for curves. And next, I'm going to target one of the channels that needs some work, the red channel. So I'll go into my red channel there with the target adjustment tool. I'm simply going to click and drag to bring up that red amount. And then I'll go into my blue yellow channel there. And I'll click and drag in order to lower that amount. Just looking to bring these numbers pretty close together. Go back to that red channel there. And just make that just exact so we have it right on the money. Alright, well now we have pretty close to a neutral color in the background. Hold down the Shift key, click and drag this around, and make sure that those numbers stay pretty consistent, and they do. Okay, well great. Let's look at our before and after. Here we have it, before and then after. Now one of the things we might want to do at this point is make some other subjective edits. For example, with this image, it might be kind of nice to, let's say, take a little bit out of the red there. So I'm just going to go ahead and just lose a little bit of that red. Now, I'm changing this color balance a little bit because I think that looks better according to my eye. I just like the way that skin tone looks there. Let me show you what I mean. Here we have our before and after. And just by lowering that point from where it was up here, a little bit too red, to a little bit less red down here, it looks nice. We can also go into the other channels. For example, that blue-yellow channel, we could click and drag this down just a bit more if we wanted a little bit more yellow in there. In this case, maybe just a point more looks kind of nice. Last thing, I want to go back to my RGB composite channel, and here I'm just going to click and drag to brighten this up. Now in this case, the color isn't exactly neutral. My numbers aren't one-to-one perfect, but that doesn't matter. You have to use this as a bit more of a guide or a recipe that you're following to get you somewhere that then you can swing one way or another. Now, how you make these changes is, of course, completely up to you, and completely up to you in regards to the intent of the photograph. Well, let's take a look at our before and after here. We can do so by clicking on this eye icon. Here's before, and then here's after. While I really like what's happening here, one of the things that I kind of miss was the blue in the eyes. Well, if ever we want to mask out an area of this particular type of edit, we have a mask built into the adjustment layer. It's already by default targeted. All we need to do is to select our brush tool. And with our brush tool, we'll paint with black. And we want to make sure we probably have a relatively low opacity. We don't necessarily need to go at 100%. And then for our brush size, I'm going to go with a nice small brush, no hardness. I'm just going to go ahead and start to paint over the eyes here. Now, as I do that, what I'm doing is I'm limiting how much of this color effect is affecting this area of the eyes. You can see the before and after by shift clicking on your mask. Here we have it before and then after. Let me zoom in a little bit more so you can see that. And here we have it again, before and then after. Now that's a pretty subtle adjustment, yet nonetheless, sometimes when working with color, the subtle adjustments are the most important ones. Well, let's go ahead and click on this eye icon. Here's our overall before and then after. One more thing I want to point out here is that with this mask, if you feel like you let in too much of the original color, in other words, I let in too much of the blue, no big deal. You can always go to the mask panel and here lower the density. And as you lower the density, you're lowering how much you're blocking out this particular adjustment. In other words, you're bringing back some of that original color there. And a lot of times, you can just bring this back till you find a sweet spot, shift-click your mask, your before and after, click on your eye icon, look at your before and after, in order to really evaluate the overall color and tone in the image. Now here, at this point, in my opinion, this image is looking really natural. It has really good color and tone. And we were able to achieve that by setting a point, analyzing the values of that point, and then by making adjustments with a curves adjustment layer. After we made those adjustments, we were kind of comparing the before and after. And we were looking for areas in our image where perhaps we didn't like the color correction so much. And you know that happens all the time because making something that's correct or exact isn't always the goal. So sometimes what you may want to do is make your objective correction and then soften it or back it off or mask it or modify it in a way so that the image looks its best.